Hello YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I want to talk to you about a topic that is seldom brought up, but I know it happens because I've had friends and other fish keepers just simply disappear off the scene, and very often when you dig a little deeper, you find out that what happened is they just burned out. They burned out, sold the fish, sold the tanks, and they're not around anymore. So let's talk about some tips on how to avoid fish keeping burnout. Let's get into it right now. If you're new to the channel, please take a minute and hit that sub button and that bell, and that notification bell, and subscribe to the channel. It tells YouTube that you like the content and encourages YouTube to put the videos in front of other fish keepers like you and me. Thank you so much for doing that. It's appreciated. So a lot of us have hit points or walls where we sort of second guessed ourselves, or maybe felt like we lost a little bit of that excitement. It's not that uncommon, and probably more common than we all imagine. And we have to look at what's behind that. And I've found that for the folks I've spoken with, very often it follows some sort of event, like a major mistake in the taking care of their tanks that resulted in a massive die-off, a disease that swept through their tanks, perhaps a lot of heavy aggression that resulted in the death of a lot of fish, something that just knocked the person back and they just couldn't get back on the horse again. They just said, you know what, I'm done, I give up. And this, I get it. I mean, I get it. But I'll tell you, if you ever start to feel that way, and we all have at some point, if you ever start to feel that way, before you leave the hobby, try to recall why you got into the hobby to begin with. As a matter of fact, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me, what inspired you? What was the inspiration that got you excited and helped to get you into fish keeping? Really recall that initial. I mean, for me, I remember very clearly at the age of 5 or 6, and my mom bringing home a tank, and a little tank she had bought with some fish in it. I think it had a rasbora, neon. I've told this story to you before. And man, I would just sit there and stare at those fish, and I just couldn't believe that I had this water, this box of water with these beautiful little creatures in it. And so for some of you, it's a matter of sort of rekindling or getting back to what was it that fired you up to begin with. And also really kind of spotting what changed. I mean, maybe you had a lifestyle change. There's kids, there's a change in your job. Now you don't have the time you used to have, to put into it. Something happened, and spotting what that was, and instead of focusing on that, focusing on the rekindling. And also, I'll tell you something. For a lot of folks, fish keeping just became a bit too complicated. And if you think back on the first time you saw a tank that gave you that sort of oh wow sort of excitement, it was very simple and very straightforward usually. And your first few tanks were probably very simple. If you've been following my channel for a long time, you've probably noticed that whenever I can, I prefer to go in the direction of simplicity. And so maybe if you're feeling that, like you're hitting a little bit of that wall, dial it back a little bit. Instead of running 50 tanks with 30 different kinds of species, maybe you need to kind of dial it back to where it was really fun. When was that last point where it was really fun for you? And go back to that point. That might mean selling off some fish and some tanks and getting it to a point where it's very manageable for you and you're really enjoying what you have, or coming up with systems that make the maintaining of the tanks simpler, easier, and give you more time to just sit and enjoy the tanks. So if you start to feel that burnout, if you start to feel like you're ready to throw it in, think back on why you got into it. Get that initial fire back, and then look at your setup and maybe dial it back to that point where you really, really were enjoying fish keeping. And before you give up, try that. It might work. And you know me, I'd love to see the hobby grow. And by the same token, I hate to see it shrink. So when we lose one, it's not a good thing. One of the things I love hearing the most is about somebody who stumbled across my channel and had given up on fish keeping and became re-inspired and now is back in it. That really fires me up and keeps me going, not only in the care of my tanks, but also in the creation of content for YouTube. One last tip that I'll leave for you, and regarding this whole topic of burnout, is that it might be time for you to consider variety. And where one person might have overextended themselves with too much variety, you might just be in a bit of a rut with having the same kind of species or routine over and over again. In my case, adding South American, Central American cichlids to the mix, and working currently on a planted community tank that will be revealed at some point in the not too distant future. These things have added a little bit of a spark, a little bit of excitement for me. And so it keeps it fresh, it keeps it interesting, and it keeps me from falling into any kind of a rut, okay? So those are my tips. I hope if you're feeling a little bit burned out, a little bit like you've hit a wall, I hope this helps. Share below if that's ever happened to you, what you did to get over it. Let's share it with the community. Let's all learn from each other around here, okay? And we'll talk about this and a whole bunch of other topics on Saturday at the Cichlids and Coffee live stream. It starts at 11 a.m. Central. That's 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And that's every Saturday morning. And I hope to see you there. And for those of you who'd like to support the channel, please consider subscribing, and also, if you'd like to take it one step further, join the Garage Gang and become a Patreon. And by clicking on the lower right-hand corner of my YouTube banner, you'll see a little Patreon icon. You can go there and watch a video on what that's all about. All right, that's it for me. See you next time. Bye-bye.